Hello everyone! I know this isn't June 20th, which is meant to be the anniversary I was meant to be uploading this video on. I'm quite a few months late and I ran into many problems trying to get this Q&A out, so just listen to this like it's a podcast. I think that's the best way I'm going to be able to get this out, because there is no way I'm going to edit what's probably going to wind up being a 30-40 minute video. So sit back, relax, listen, treat it as if it's an audiobook or podcast and relax. So I think first off, before I get into this, I would like to pretty much say a thank you to Dark Blue Engines Productions 2025, whose OC is known as Dylan. They've been commenting on some of my videos, so I checked out their channel and found they did some Q&As, and I've just finished watching the second one, and that's what's got me back into doing this. So thank you, Dylan. So I'm going to I'll probably have Dylan linked below. I usually do that. So So the reason why it took me so long to get this Q&A out was because multiple times something happened. Most of the times I ended up just deleting the audio by mistake, and I cannot tell you how many times that happened. It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous, and the first time I tried to do it was when I found out, oh, my audio's cutting out, so about after every 10 minutes or so, I have to reset the audio. So if you hear me pause, maybe the audio cut out, so then come back on, maybe a little bit differently, it's just me resetting the microphone. So, yeah. But anyway, that's enough babble. Let's get into the video. Now, I will say there was someone who posted a comment, some questions, and then deleted it, but I do want to answer at least one of the questions they left, which is the only one I can remember, and it was them asking about the Wellsworth and Sudbury, and what my names for the engines were. So I'm going to answer that because I've got the names in mind, and I kind of want to label it down for later. For later, as Dieselton would say. So this is going to come off quite on the nose, I will say that. So for number one, Manny. If you know the Wellsworth and Sudbury, you know their first two engines were Manning Wardles, so obviously I'm taking a bit of an Audrey kind of thing, so where it's naming the engines after what they are, or their builders. So first off, number one, Manny. Number two, Wardle, obviously. And I'm pretty sure Wardle is the name. I could be wrong on that, though. Number three, I'm going to say Lady Kerr. No relation to Lady the Magic Engine. But, you know, maybe if I do decide to work Lady into a headcanon, I may make her that engine. Sorry about that. I meant that to stop for a moment. Anyway, Lady Kerr, I think, is the engine I'm going to go with. And then, of course, Lincoln, who was recently christened that by Clive Spong earlier this year. Funny thing about Lincoln, though, I uploaded a video where I covered his basis, and then about a few days later that interview with Clive Spong came out, where he christened him Lincoln, and it was, if I just waited a few more days to actually if I just waited a little bit longer to film the audio, I could refer to him properly by name as Lincoln, rather than having to call him a dark green engine, as Thomas Wiki labelled him as, But oh well. But yeah, those are my Wellsworth and Sudbury lineup when it comes to engine names. So then to the comments that are still up. First, I'm going to do it from most recent to least recent on the video. Then I'll go to my community post where some people left questions. So our first question comes from Mikey and Friends 7356. His first question was, will you do another basis video like what you did with the Loans engines? This kind of came out, he posted this comment during my little bit of a hiatus between the Blue engines and the Mid-Sodor video, so I will probably be doing more. There are further engines I want to do. I at least want to get done with the Not engines. I kind of want to do The other mid-soda engines. I think there are some engines where they want to do some more obscure things, like the original version of Bertram, maybe as a well tank. I would like to do that. I would love to do some of the magazine characters as well, like Victor and Sydney and 13. I think those may be on my list. I'm not sure whether I'll do something like the workshop engines and Percy's Friends and the scrapped engines. I'm not sure if I'll do those. But I could, but I generally don't know if that's something I want to do. We'll see. But yeah, the thing is, there's so many engines to cover, and it's how am I going to do like the not engines? You know, because I was thinking, oh, could I throw Victor, the standard gauge Victor, into that? And it was, but if I do that, it's just going to seem like a random insert. And it's so then what if I threw Bertram into that, and if I do that, it's going to seem like a random insert. So I'm not quite sure how I'll tackle not Edward and not Thomas. Shall I just do them on their own, which would make me have to forego you doing 3 engines. Shall I throw in the not Gordon / Henry, who's on the left of that image? I want to make it clear. He's the one on the left, not the right. He's the left blue engine, not the right blue engine. I was talking with Dylan in the comments section, and he thought I was referring to both engines. No, I just mean the one on the left. I want to make that clear. But yeah, I probably will do more basis videos. So they're definitely on my list. Number 2 is, what are my ideal names for the loaned engines? Like, if you had to pick one, what would they be? I generally don't want to give those engines names. In the past, I had given them names. I used to go with the very typical Alfred and Craven. And I did actually discover quite a while recently, earlier this year, when as I was making the loaned engines, just before I made the loaned engines basis video, I found an old thing I was making that I never actually put out on the internet. It's like a little website thing, and it was kind of like a wiki thing, and I had Alfred on there, and it turns out I used to call him Methane, which I find very funny because it's very similar to methane. But anyway, I then also eventually, about 3 years ago now, back in 2022. Oh, it's been a long time. I would call them Wolf and Wolf for 98462 and Reverend for 87546. But now I just do their numbers. I generally just prefer them to be what they are, nameless engines. And it's also why I never named the red engine in my red engine video. My red engine story video during 3 mood engines in that series that I still need to finish. I purposely didn't name him. I only referred to him as the red engine in that video because I didn't want to name him and then later on, oh, I don't like that name, I want to change it. So it's, in that way I'm keeping it broad, and I can still call the engine something if I ended up deciding I wanted to call them something, you know. I probably won't though, and at the moment I'm trying hard, I really am trying not to go too deep into developing headcanons for Thomas, because if you watch my anniversary video from last year, you know I've been working on a book. I really haven't done much work on it this year. I have done a bit, but I haven't really done as much as I have for the previous few years, for the previous 2 years, and that's kind of been getting to me quite a bit. I've been thinking of just dedicating about an hour a day to the book. I probably should start doing that. It doesn't even just have to be writing it can just be thinking about what's going to be in the next chapter, because I've got a general idea for the book. It's just how am I going to bring it to life as an in-depth story, if that makes sense. I'm getting a bit off track here, but yeah, it's generally just, personally, I don't want to give the engines names. I'm happy with them being unknown or just being going by their numbers. So thank you for those questions, Mikey and friends. Next up is Daminator, and you've asked quite a lot of questions, spanning various comments. So, first question: what was your greatest nitpick of the CGI series, and what episode sucked the most? Generally, I'm a fan of the CGI series. I'm even a fan of the Nitrogen era, to be honest. I was pretty much brought up with the Nitrogen era, but I still quite enjoyed that era of the show. I'll be honest, it does have a soft spot for me. But yeah, I don't really have much in terms of complaints for the CGI series, and I don't really have a least favourite episode. And your next question was, what was my favourite Cars movie, and what did I think of this great discovery? Favourite Cars movie? Don't know. I enjoy all of them. I think Cars 1 is great. I enjoy Cars 2. I know not a lot of people like it. I like it though. Cars 3 is also another good one. And as for the great discovery, enjoyed it. Again, I don't have too much to say when it comes to stuff where it's nostalgia biased. Next question was, who is my favourite narrow gauge engine? And that's tough for me, because it's actually a 2-way tie for narrow gauge, but 3-way tie for favourite character overall. That would be Edward, Duke, and Renius. Edward is still currently topping my favourite character, but Renius and Duke have multiple times nearly gotten to the top. Duke, I really enjoy. I really got a soft spot for him, and I used to do my Mid-Sodor series. If you were watching back in the day, I've since taken that down. But yeah, Renius, again, as I mentioned, I was brought up the Nitrogen era, and of course, Renius didn't really appear that much in episodes, really. From what I had, at least. And so, because Renius felt like he was such an insignificant character, to me it was quite enjoyable to always see him quickly appear. And I think that's why it took the top spot for me to begin with, but Duke has really been fighting him for favourite narrow gauge engine. Now the next question is, what is my favourite Thomas ship? Thomas and Lady, Henry and Emily, Gordon and Rebecca, James and Rosie, Douglas and Lily, who I assume you're talking about the Wild Nor'Wester character, or Luke and Millie. I personally don't believe ships belong in Thomas, so I'm going to say none. I think there are times and places for shipping characters. I think it's just with stuff like Thomas, if you're going to do that, it's mainly, for, at least in my opinion, it's more appropriate to do with the human characters than the actual locomotives, in my opinion. But that is just my opinion. You're entitled to think of your own. I think the only time I've actually seen ships done well, and it's of course not in like a comedic way like Armour Fall, is with Victor Tanzig's series of Stories of Sodor, and it only works in that because it's somewhat disconnected from the actual, because it is quite disconnected from the original Thomas show, and the Railway series. It's in a more, as much as I hate to say it, realistic and very grounded and gritty world. And especially in the later seasons, of course, he gets more into that kind of adult storytelling, and I think that it actually works very well in that series, but only because of how Victor Tanzig writes the episodes. He only makes it work because of how the rest of the environment and stories complement the relationships. So yeah, I generally don't believe it works, but I think Stories of Sodor is probably the best place I've ever seen a ship done, where it actually kind of feels quite natural. And your last question is, who would be who if your series was a Thomas Transformers hybrid series? I have not done anything with Transformers, since I was very, very young. I think the last thing I can remember doing with them was the Angry Birds Transformers games, and those were years ago. So, yeah, I'm personally all I know is Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. Don't know anyone else. So I'm not the one to be asking for that. Julian Neal asks, Titmoth Railway 440 Scorch saying could work with the first class engine. Don't know what that is, and that isn't really a question. Tame Malganis asks, do you think the best basis for 98462 is the CR191 class? CR191 locomotive. And the Highland Railway River class. The running boards may be off, but so is Gordon, and the illustrations of the engines aren't 100% accurate to real life. I already covered what I think is the best basis for 98462 in the Loans Engines video, and I came down to it being an N15. Generally, the thing is with 98462, he is in that really weird circle where does he have certain details or not? Because certain illustrations show him, because one illustration shows him with cylinders and valve gear, but two show him without. So which is he? You know, which is he? Does he have cylinders and valve gear? Doesn't he? It's really a complicated. 98462 is a really kind of complicated thing, and all I can really say is that he probably does have cylinders and valve gear, so I'm going to say no. But you know, again, that's my opinion. People are entitled to their own. Solai Conomask GPA asks, when will episode 4 of the 3-wheeled engines come out? I don't know. I'm going to say that right here, I do not know. The thing is, I'm terrible at trying to keep deadlines, so I'm not going to actually give you a deadline or say I'm working on a video until I know right then. I know it's going to be coming out now, and that's when I'll start to actually tell you, right, this is when it's coming out, when I know I've finished it completely. And yeah, I've gone a bit far when it comes to the stuff I've been showing on my community posts with Anthony and Ronnie, and the engine I haven't quite shown on there for a while, adds a line with the harbour, Fourier Harbour. So I am kind of breaking that rule a little bit there, but yeah, I don't know when. I haven't done any more filming for it since I think my last community post on it, mainly just because it's Blue Train with Friends is really, for some reason, really buggy for some reason. There just seems to be invisible blocks at different places, and it's also, the engines can be really difficult to use at times. It's 98462's tender doesn't exactly line up with the coaches, and that kind of just leads to it being, well, how you fit. You have to kind of just ram the tender in back until it sticks, and it can be a bit it can be quite frustrating. And if you don't, and sometimes the tender will derail, so you have to get a new 98462. It's a really tough thing. Julia Neal is back asking another few questions, saying, and I also think the LBSCR E4 could work for the first blue engine, and I think that the fast blue engine could be an LMS Shinty. I don't quite know which ones you're talking about there. Are you referring to the little blue tank engine or the 060 tank engine? Because I don't know. Either way, neither would work, simply for either the wheelbase or the splashers and the general sizing, so no. Jackie Justin asks, can you please bring back the Mid-Sodal series? It was my childhood. I'm afraid I'm not going to be bringing it back. Louis from Duncan Gaming, hello Louis. friend asks, what's the video of yours that you are most proud of? I generally don't have a most proud of video. Maybe the first basis video, but yeah. Favourite video to edit though was definitely the not engine one. I found with all the gags in there, it was quite an enjoyable thing to edit with the not things from Doctor Who. Number 2 is, what's your favourite piece of fan content made for any franchise? This is tough because there is so much and also so little, and I can't really put one finger on it. So I'm going to generally list off a couple things, and I'm also will stray from franchises because why not? For Thomas, generally not too active when it comes to that. I enjoy Thomas theories, and I enjoy looking at some random stuff. But yeah, like some of the model train stuff. I know there's a train modeler, but generally I can't just watch the same things over really. Usually, unless like Thomas Theorist or TTE guy has a new video out, so I'm generally not keeping up with all the new Thomas content coming out that much. Train modeler, I've been watching quite a few of his videos when he does upload new ones, and you know, they're actually quite enjoyable. I like some of his takes on Thomas stories. For the Star Wars scene, generally it's just bombastic clips and X clips. The Star Wars community just isn't really that not pleasant to be in. While Disney's been in charge, honestly, it's just generally not a nice place to be in, and you can't turn a corner without seeing someone say Disney bad, Lucas good, and it's more complicated than that in my opinion. But yeah, I generally try to stay off Star Wars YouTube, or at least try to interact with it. And it doesn't always seem like half the time you try to say something, depending on what it is, you'll cause an outrage. So yeah. Doctor Who wise, there's quite mainly Josh Snares. He's very good with his videos. He has lots of like documentary things, and they're very enjoyable to watch. They are. He's done rankings recently. He's done mini documentaries on unmade Doctor Who stories, most famously his missing episodes series for what happens to the missing episodes and how you can watch them. Sounds very contradictory, I know, but there are ways to watch the missing episodes. But yeah, Josh Snares is a very enjoyable Doctor Who YouTuber, or Who-tuber, as they're sometimes called. Crispy Pro I occasionally watch. Generally don't watch him as much though. Brambles and Stars, I could not. If I do not mention Brambles and Stars, this would be. They have such good music. They've been doing covers for the show since the Jodie Whittaker era. They were doing it since series 12, I'm fairly sure, but it was only really until Power of the Doctor they really started to do music for each episode in kind of somewhat full things. I've probably been using some of their music throughout this video because it is just so good. Yeah, I'd highly suggest checking out Brambles and Stars. Their music is of really good quality. It is. The covers and arrangements are just incredible. To stray quickly back to the Star Wars thing, I do just remember a series of fan films I really do enjoy watching, and I've watched them quite a few times actually, is The Thing About Betrayal fan films. They were very good. I quite enjoyed them. So yeah. The thing is, I can't really think of much else at the moment. I'll have a lot more come to mind later, but I think at the moment it's mainly just those things. So yeah. But I have something much to mind. It wouldn't have stopped filming. But anyway, and your last question is, you have to choose one to be erased from existence. Doctor Who, Star Wars, or Thomas the Tank Engine. And I'm going to say, because you didn't propose this and say, well, you can't choose that, I'm going to say none. Because you didn't say I couldn't say none. But the thing is, with all three of these, they have had some sort of influence on me. Of course, Thomas, very big influence growing up. Doctor Who, quite educational actually. And Star Wars, very influential on my writing. It's been a very big influence with writing my book. So yeah, this is a very tough question, and I'm going to stick with my answer of none. How am I meant to pronounce that? Carinetta Sylvia Santo 3731. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that in any way. Probably I definitely did. Asks, number 1, who is your favourite Tugs character? I'm probably Top Hat. You know, he's such a joy to watch. He really is. Yeah, and it's a shame his voice actor passed away. I think it was earlier this year or last year. So yeah, but he is a very enjoyable character to watch in the show. And your second question is, do I like Purple Hoodie Zero? I didn't know who he was before you asked the question. I wonder if you asked me that question, because when I did upload the announcement, Purple Hoodie had released a video with his own Q&A only mere hours before. But the thing is, I never heard of him before, so yeah, I've checked out a few of his videos. I enjoyed them, but it's definitely not some. I don't mean to be mean, but it's not some of it. I would watch his content a lot. It's more of a passive watcher. I think that's the best way to put it. Passive watcher. But I'll check him out occasionally, but not a dedicated viewer, if that makes sense. And your third question, I decided to just answer in your replies because I don't want to talk about controversy. And drama. I try to avoid it as much as possible. Next up we have Enterprise1480. He asks me, thoughts on Thomas being an LBSC E4 or James being an LBSCR K class, there we go, or Henry being an Atlantic or Gordon being a normal LNER A1 rebuilt into an A3. Generally, I don't like changing the characters' bases. I'm pretty much fine with the bases of all the engines except one, which we'll get to later, but generally I do not like changing the engine's bases. I do think there are some engines like Bertram where it's just like they're so obscure where it's you can go and mix them up. It's not the engine I'm referring to changing it, but I did write a headcanon for Bertram yesterday. And he's got a bit of a Percy situation where he's a bit of a hodgepodge, but you know, God wanted him to kind of be that well tank he was meant to be, but was kind of over the years modified by different minds to be to look more like a George England sort of car character. But anyway, generally I don't like changing the bases of engines. I think all the engines are pretty much fine as they are, except for one which we'll get to later. Your second question is, or was Gordon a normal LNER rebuilt into an A3 in your headcanon, yes or no? Funny you say that, because I actually used to headcanon Gordon with a corridor tender, but I generally don't anymore. Generally, I'm fine with Gordon being a weird one-off prototype, used to fix the weird kinks of the A1s to begin with. Again, I don't like changing the bases of the engines. I'm glad other people think they want to change the bases to be more ideally suited for them. It's just personally, I'm fine with what the engines are. Your third question is, will you make your own Thomas headcanon videos? That's a tough question. Maybe not. I don't know. It depends on if people would want that. And also, it's, as I said, I've been trying to cut back the headcanon stuff to focus more on my writing or other stuff that I'm a bit more interested in. So, you'll probably get a few episodes of that, something for the Mid-Soda and the Loans Engines, but you'll probably just end at that. I generally don't want to do too much with that, and it's also how would I present the video? You know, am I going to say, right then, this is my ideal so-and-so, and if I do that, you know, people are going to be asking me, well, where's your ideal James? Where's your ideal Emily? Where's your ideal Thomas? Where's your ideal Gordon? And this is just meant to be for the engines of obscure. And it really is, it's how would I even title it? And it's, well, do I put it, this is my headcanon for Sodor's Loans Engines? My headcanon for the Mid-Soda engines, because I'm not sure people would click on that, but, you know, the most unexpected titles seem to do well, so I generally don't know how I would do that video. Your fourth question is, do you have your own Thomas headcanon? Yes, and it's called the Railway series. I'm joking, of course, but generally the Railway series is my headcanon with a few additions for the of TV series characters. Really, all the headcanon stuff mainly just comes from more obscure characters, or like the Mid-Soda engines and Loans engines. And even with the Mid-Soda engines, I don't like trying to figure them out to any great extent. The thing is, if you're trying to figure out the Mid-Soda engines, is that they're kind of a bit of a mess, the Mid-Soda, if you're trying to canonise all of them. Excluding the Alberts, like I've just given up trying to canonise all three versions of him, but I'm just going with the third version of Albert. But generally, I think you can, for me at least, I only do the headcanons for the obscure engines. I generally just leave the rest as it is in the Railway series. I'm fine as it is. Your fifth question is thoughts on the Beatles, and what's your favourite Beatles song? I generally haven't listened to the Beatles for about a year or 2 years. Personally, I don't think I'm too big when it comes to 60s music, which is funny because I seem to be fine with music from everywhere else in the 1900s, but for the 60s it just doesn't quite seem to hit for me. That doesn't mean I don't have songs I don't like in the 60s, it's just like Paint It Black, obvious classic, but I just generally, for me at least, the 60s music just isn't quite there, I think, most of the time. And your sixth question is thoughts on the French-Belgian comic book series Asterix, the Gold Tintin and Lucky Luke, and I've never heard of them before you posted this comment, so I'm sorry, I have not really done any research into them, so yeah, sorry I can't really answer that question. Oh, aside from I don't know. I haven't gone through them. Next up is Kyle Northeast, who asks, what is the basis of the green engine in Edward's Day Out? And you can go and watch my not basis video for Sodor's Imposters. My basis video for Sodor's Imposters for that. But this comment was posted before I posted that video. So yeah. So the simple answer, just go watch that video. Yeah. Now we have a couple last comments from the community post. First off is Chatnoia Fan 2026, you're living in the future, who asks, which Railway series book would you consider to be the best and the worst? Best, probably Duke the Lost Engine, but I don't really know. And worst, I don't think there is a worst, and personally I haven't gone through all of them. Number 2 is, if you could develop any nothing characters in the Railway series, who would they be and why? Probably the Loans engines, which I've kind of been doing 3 Rude engines, and probably some of the mid-Sodor engines. So yeah. And this is who I was referring to when it came to changing bases, as your third question is, if you can change the basis of any character from the Railway series or TV series, which ones would you choose? Again, I would only ever change one of the engine's bases, personally. Even with Bertram, it's a bit... does I really... He can... It's mainly just a bit of a rough headcanon to put together, and even then, it's such a minor part, I don't really need to... It's such a minor part of his story. I think I can just remove it or put it in for my Bertram headcanon, but for this character in specific that I'm about to cover, I have no idea why they chose that model, that class of engine for him to be, and it is Smudger. I cannot stand Smudger. I can't stand him as a character, which is funny because I really like Stanley from the Railway series, but I can't stand Smudger. I really can't. His basis makes no sense because he's a Class BB, but the Class BBs were very smooth runners in real life. They were famously known for being smooth runners. And of course, Smudger is a rough rider, so it's... And does that make any sense? Like, you couldn't have redone Duncan's model up to be Smudger. That at least would make sense. And you can't even say, oh, he was built in like a remote area, because it's then how to explain his American accent. I highly doubt he would have been built in America. He's a British engine from Wales who's 19th century. I doubt his plans were sent over to America so they could build him. You know, it seems very far-fetched to me. I think the only other place the plans would have been found would probably have been the Taliclin Railway and the Skarloey Railway. You know, it's only because they have the class BBs of their own. You know, it's what, and also Fletcher Jennings' company, of course, and their works or whatever. You know, it's just what? How does Smudger make any sense? I generally, if you're looking at it on the surface, he's technically the inferior character to Stanley, because he's just Stanley but less developed, and also makes less sense because of his basis. And also, you know, got an American accent, which, as we just covered, wouldn't really work. So yeah, for Smudger, I don't really think there's a way to make him work without changing his character, and I personally don't want to do that. I personally just would rather think that a lot of the narrow gauge engines from our TV exclusives just aren't canon. That's how I think of them. With probably the exception of Bertram, but even now I will probably remove him at some point in the future. Even with the headcanon I formed for him yesterday, it's kind of just more of a, this is my idea for Bertram if I am to have him on my headcanon. Luke, Millie and Victor probably would be canon though, I don't know. But anyway, we're getting a bit off topic here. I would change Smudger's basis. What to? I don't know. But, you know, at least change his basis to something more logistical. I don't know why they went with Renius of all characters, when you could instead have made him redone Duncan. I'm fairly sure the mid-Sodor scenes were the last things done for Series 5, and Duncan only appears once in the background, and you could replace him with a different engine like Renius or Skarloey like they were usually doing. You know, it's... or even Peter Sam. Sorry, Stewart. Not Peter Sam, Stewart. It's just... Did you really need to go with Renius? You could have made him Duncan when it actually makes sense, because Duncan's a rough rider himself. Oh well. Finally, you may recognise this user because I've mentioned him on the channel before in my Not Engines video. It's Hanif the Steam Engine 69524. with his last questions. Your first question is, do you like the BR Class 08? And I'm fairly sure that's what diesel is, but I'm going to double check. Yes, it is. Wanted to make sure I got that right. Yes, I like them, but probably just because they are what diesel are, and he's quite iconic. Second question: can you name all brake fans on Thomas the Tank Engine? You got Toad, Bradford, Spiteful brake fan, or as I like to call him, Spit. Rather than Spiteful, let's just go with Spit. I know there's also, if you want to include the magazines, you've also got like the old man brake fan thing, where he's got the big moustache thing. I don't know why I keep saying thing. It'll just be the Addams Family. No. But yeah, generally there's more unnamed brake fans than named, and I think I've got through the most significant ones there. Number 3, can you make a video about a black engine on the background of the first illustration of Henry and the Elephant? And generally, I didn't quite see what you were talking about. I think you were either talking about Edward, Gordon, or a van way off in the background. Oh, no, the microphone's still working, sorry. But I generally think you were talking about either a van, Gordon, or Edward. I couldn't find an engine in the background of the first illustration of Henry and the Elephant, but I did see one later on, which is what I've labelled as not Henry, not Gordon. No, not Henry Gordon, sorry. Fourth question, how would the moon look like if it was square? And I think it would just look like the moon if it was a square. It just would be square, not round, it would be cubic. Number 5, what is your favourite livery for a tank engine? That's a tough question. Generally I'm just going to answer favourite livery in general. I think BR Blue is a very appealing livery. I think it's quite nice. But if you want to include like made up liveries, I'd probably say the livery I went for with the Voyage tramway thing I've been doing, which you can look at my community posts for. It's generally pretty much just BR Blue, but rather with the, of course, the black and white outlining, but the lining's a bit more intricate and all over the sides, and rather than it being blue, it's to me at least a very appealing kind of maroon colour. I quite enjoy that livery. And that is all the questions. So, finally got this out after a few months. So yeah, now my voice needs to rest because I've been talking for 42 minutes. And my mouth is feeling a little bit burn. It's getting a bit of a burning sensation, so I'll probably just stop talking now. Probably didn't help that I had some ginger nuts, and I'm feeling I've been a bit sick since reading, I think, chapter 2 just before in between reading chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Skywalkers. If you've been keeping up with the channel. So yeah. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and goodbye.